My girlfriend Sandra had threatened to break up with me exactly 249 times, and each time she expected me to beg her to stay. But this time, I decided to agree, and her reaction shattered both our worlds. We had always played this exhausting game. She would say, "Franklin, I'm done. I can't take this anymore." And I'd drop everything to reassure her of my love. Yet every time I fought to keep her, she pulled a little further away. My heart felt like a torn canvas, slowly unraveling with every painful cycle. On that rainy Saturday night, as thunder rattled the windows of our small apartment, she looked into my eyes and delivered the words I'd grown to dread yet expect. "Maybe we should break up, Franklin. I'm serious this time." But for the first time, instead of panic, I felt an odd calm. I was tired of the constant emotional roller coaster, tired of always proving myself, tired of living on her terms. So I looked directly into her startled eyes and whispered softly, "Maybe you're right, Sandra. Maybe we should." Her eyes widened in shock, her lips trembling as if I'd just committed an unspeakable crime. She stepped back as if physically struck, knocking over the mug she'd bought me on our first anniversary, its shattered pieces scattering across the floor, a painful symbol of our relationship. She stared down at the fragments in disbelief, then looked back up at me, tears forming rapidly. "Franklin, what do you mean?" Her voice shook, suddenly soft and uncertain. For once, she wasn't the confident, strong-willed woman who always seemed one step ahead. This vulnerable, devastated version of Sandra was new to me. "I mean exactly what you just said," I replied, trying to maintain my composure despite my heart racing in my chest. "Maybe breaking up really is best for both of us." Her tears flowed openly now, streaking her mascara down her cheeks as she whispered desperately, "No, Franklin, that's not what I meant. I don't want this. Please, take it back." But as I watched her crumble before me, I realized something. For the first time in years, I felt free. Yet, as the feeling of liberation washed over me, guilt crept into its wake. I had never intended to hurt Sandra, but how much longer could I endure this emotional torment? I had finally called her bluff, and now I wasn't sure if either of us would ever recover from it. My name is Franklin Harris, and I had always considered myself a patient man, someone who could withstand life's trials without breaking. But even the strongest patience has limits, and mine was tested every single day by the person I loved most in the world, my girlfriend, Sandra Brooks. Sandra wasn't someone you could easily forget. From the moment I met her, I knew she was special. With flowing auburn hair, eyes that held both warmth and mystery, and a smile capable of lighting up an entire room, she was like a magnetic force. Everyone around us envied our relationship, convinced we had something perfect, something unbreakable. Yet, behind closed doors, the reality was far from the fairy tale others imagined. Sandra was fiercely intelligent, passionately driven, and sometimes painfully stubborn. Her confidence was mesmerizing, yet it hid layers of insecurity that surfaced unpredictably. I fell for all of it, the brilliance and the chaos alike, hopelessly captivated by a woman whose moods were as beautiful and turbulent as ocean waves. But loving her meant navigating stormy seas, never knowing when the calm waters would turn violent again. Our relationship started like most do, blissful and exciting. The early days were full of laughter, stolen kisses, and whispered promises beneath starry skies. We met during college, at a time when the world still felt full of endless possibilities. Sandra was studying psychology, always analyzing everything around her, searching for hidden meanings in people's actions and words. Maybe that was the reason she always tested me, trying to find some flaw, some hidden reason to leave. Our first major fight was over something insignificant, a missed dinner reservation on our anniversary. She shouted in frustration, her words sharp and cutting. Yet just when I expected her to walk out, she cried softly and clung to me, whispering apologies. I held her tight, promising we'd never let trivial things tear us apart. But that pattern repeated itself endlessly, each time more intense and more draining than before. Every few weeks, Sandra would threaten to break up. Sometimes it was out of anger, sometimes out of hurt, and sometimes seemingly out of nowhere. Initially, I panicked whenever she said it, believing her every word, fearing losing her more than anything. I'd beg her to reconsider, shower her with affection and reassurance, promising things would get better. And for a short while, they did. We'd go back to smiling, holding hands, and pretending nothing ever happened. But each cycle chipped away, a little more at my heart. It became clear over time that Sandra had developed an unhealthy habit, an emotional weapon she wielded without even realizing how deeply it wounded me. Every threat she made was like a dagger twisting inside my chest. Still, I stayed, believing I could help her heal whatever pain caused her constant doubts. But the more I tried, the more distant she became, until loving Sandra felt like holding on to smoke. Intangible, elusive, and constantly slipping through my fingers. Then there was Willis, my best friend since childhood and the only person who genuinely understood what I was going through. He often told me to end things with Sandra, saying our relationship wasn't healthy, that it drained me emotionally. He'd shake his head sympathetically, telling me, "Franklin, you deserve better. Someone who appreciates you." But despite Willis's warnings, I couldn't let Sandra go. Maybe because deep down, beneath all the arguments and insecurities, I still believed in our love, still thought it was worth fighting for. Yet, as months turned into years, my patience slowly eroded, and I began questioning everything. Was it healthy to be in a relationship where threats of leaving became routine? Was it normal to always feel on edge, bracing for the next emotional storm? I loved Sandra passionately, but loving her came at the cost of my own peace and happiness. Sometimes I'd lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, asking myself if love was supposed to feel like this, beautiful yet painful, comforting yet tormenting. Then, Shirley entered our lives, a mutual friend of ours who moved back to town after years abroad. Shirley was everything Sandra wasn't: gentle, patient, emotionally steady. Her presence was calming, a sharp contrast to Sandra's intensity. Whenever we spent time together as a group, I found myself gravitating toward Shirley's peaceful energy, her effortless laughter soothing something broken deep inside me. She became a quiet refuge from the emotional turbulence Sandra brought into my world. Sandra noticed my growing closeness to Shirley and grew increasingly insecure, even hostile. Our arguments intensified, and the threats became more frequent. Each fight ended with her angrily suggesting we break up, waiting expectantly for me to plead and comfort her again. And every time, despite my weariness, I did exactly what she wanted. But deep inside, something had changed. My heart wasn't racing in panic anymore. Instead, it felt numb, tired, and desperately longing for peace. Willis kept pushing me, his voice increasingly urgent, saying, "Franklin, you can't live like this forever. Either Sandra changes, or you need to walk away." I hated admitting he was right. Sandra and I were trapped in a toxic pattern, locked in an emotional dance neither of us knew how to stop. But how could I leave the person I loved most? The idea felt unbearable. Yet, so did staying. One night, while cleaning our apartment alone after another fight, I found an old photograph, taken during our first anniversary, smiling genuinely, eyes filled with nothing but love. Looking at that image hurt deeply because it reminded me how beautiful things had once been. It also showed me how far we had fallen. And in that quiet moment, I finally understood something crucial. Sandra's constant threats to break up weren't just words. They were symptoms of something deeply broken within us. It wasn't about love anymore, but fear. Fear of being alone, fear of abandonment, fear of confronting painful truths. I realized that love couldn't survive forever under such exhausting conditions. My patience had finally run dry, and the next time Sandra threatened to leave, I wouldn't beg or plead anymore. Instead, I'd find the strength to let go, even if it broke both our hearts in the process. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of dull, overcast day where everything feels slightly heavier. I had just returned home early from work, hoping to surprise Sandra with her favorite takeout from the Thai place near her yoga studio. It wasn't a special occasion, I just missed her. I wanted to see her smile, to remind us both that we still had something good beneath all the tension. But as I stepped into the apartment, something felt off. The living room was too quiet. Her phone, usually buzzing nonstop, was lying on the couch, face down. I placed the takeout on the table and moved down the hallway, pausing just outside the slightly open bedroom door. That's when I heard her voice. Not angry, not sad, just low and intimate. I know I should have told him," she was saying. My body stiffened. I couldn't hear the other side of the call, but I didn't need to. I knew that tone. It was the one she used when she spoke to someone she trusted more than me. Someone whose opinion mattered enough to make her voice tremble with vulnerability. I just feel like he's slipping away. I don't know what to do anymore. A pause. Then, quieter. Sometimes, I think maybe I should just push him to leave me, so I don't have to be the one to walk away. I stepped back from the door as if burned. My mind was racing. Was she planning to leave me? Not because she didn't love me, but because she was scared to confront me honestly? Or worse, was she pushing me away so she could fall into someone else's arms without the guilt? I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. When she came out and saw the food on the table, she smiled and kissed me on the cheek like nothing had happened. But my chest felt hollow. I smiled back. I played my part. But something had cracked. The next few days passed like clockwork. Sandra would laugh at my jokes, lean on my shoulder while we watched TV, and still, there was distance. Her eyes lingered a little too long on her phone screen. Her smiles didn't reach her eyes, and I noticed things I had ignored before. How she typed quickly and then locked her phone. How she'd excuse herself to the bedroom and close the door for her calls. Then came the night of Shirley's birthday. A small group of friends had gathered at a cozy rooftop bar to celebrate. Sandra showed up late, dressed beautifully but with a tightness in her face. Shirley had always gotten along with her, but that night, the tension between them was undeniable. Shirley greeted Sandra warmly, but Sandra's smile was thin, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. During dinner, I tried to make conversation feel normal, but Sandra kept picking little fights. Why hadn't I waited for her to arrive before ordering drinks? Why was I sitting closer to Shirley than her? Why did Shirley laugh at every joke I made? As I reached for my drink, Sandra leaned in and whispered sharply, "Are you two getting close now or something?" I blinked, caught off guard. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb," she snapped, her voice just loud enough for the others to notice something was wrong. "She looks at you like she wants more than just friendship. And you don't even try to hide how comfortable you are with her." I felt Shirley shift uncomfortably beside me, clearly hearing every word. "Sandra, that's not fair," I whispered back. "You know we're just friends. Please don't make a scene." Sandra's face twisted into something between a scoff and a sad smile. "Of course. Franklin always knows best, right?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. That familiar exhaustion settled in again, the one I always felt when our conversations turned into cold wars. After the party, we rode home in silence. When we got inside, Sandra tossed her purse on the couch and stood by the window, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "You don't get it, do you?" she said without looking at me. "Then explain it to me," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. She turned around, eyes glossy. "I feel like I'm competing for your attention. I feel like every time I reach for you, you're already somewhere else. With work, with Willis, with Shirley." "That's not true," I said quickly. "No, I'm here. I've always been here." "But for how long, Franklin?" she shot back. "How long before you get tired of all this and leave?" And there it was. The real fear. The real reason behind every fight, every breakup threat. She was terrified of being left, so she made sure she was the one who left first, even if only with words. I stepped closer, trying to soften the moment. "Sandra, If you feel like I'm slipping away, why don't you hold on tighter instead of pushing me out? She stared at me, expression unreadable. Because maybe I'm scared that if I hold on and you still leave, I won't survive that. My heart clenched. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I wasn't going anywhere. But deep inside, a part of me wondered if I already had. Not physically, but emotionally. I was still standing in front of her. But the version of me that had once believed we were unbreakable, he was fading. And that night, as we lay side by side in bed, not touching, not speaking, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how we ended up here. Two people still in love, yet drowning in misunderstandings neither of us knew how to fix. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Sandra, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing. It used to comfort me. I used to reach over and hold her close, just to feel that warmth. But now, there was a chasm between us, one that no amount of physical proximity could bridge. The silence was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. She stirred slightly in her sleep, murmuring something incoherent. I turned my head to look at her. Her face was calm, peaceful even. In that moment, I felt a sudden piercing ache in my chest. I still loved her. That was the problem. I loved her in a way that hurt me, and I didn't know how to stop. Every time she threatened to leave, it tore a little piece of my soul away. At first, I thought I could handle it, that it was just a phase, that she just needed time to feel secure. I kept reassuring her, showing up for her, proving over and over that I wasn't going anywhere. But now, I wasn't sure anymore. It wasn't about Shirley, not really. Shirley had simply become the mirror that showed me the contrast between chaos and calm. She never tried to replace Sandra. She never even crossed a line. But her presence reminded me of the peace I hadn't felt in years. And that scared me, because if peace could be found outside my relationship, then what did that say about the one I was in? I turned away from Sandra and stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. What if I really did walk away? What would happen to her? Would she be relieved? Would she finally feel free of the insecurities and fears that haunted her? Or would it break her in a way I could never fix? I hated myself for even thinking about it. She had told me she felt like I was slipping away, and the worst part was, she was right. I was slipping. Not because of someone else, not because of Shirley, but because I had nothing left to hold on to. I had spent so long being the emotional anchor that I had started to drown myself. I remembered a time when Sandra would laugh so freely when we'd walk down the street and she'd squeeze my hand just because she was happy. I remembered how we used to dance in the kitchen, burn pancakes on Sunday mornings, make stupid bets about who could quote more lines from movies. All of it. Gone. Like a dream that fades the moment you wake up. Now, every day was eggshells. What would I say to not upset her? What small mistake would trigger the next threat? What new reason would she find to test whether I still loved her? It wasn't love anymore. It was survival. The worst part? I didn't blame her. I knew she was hurting too. I knew somewhere in that beautiful, complicated mind of hers, she wanted love as deeply as I did. But her fears had built walls even I couldn't climb. And with every threat, every accusation, every silence after a fight, those walls grew taller. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the last time I felt like she trusted me. Not the moments where she said she did, but really did. I couldn't. Instead, all I could remember were the times she doubted me. The cold, glares, the suspicion. The way her voice would crack when she asked, "Do you still even want me?" She never realized that every time she questioned my loyalty, she questioned the very thing I was trying hardest to protect. Us. And now, lying there, I didn't know who I was anymore. I wasn't just Franklin, the guy who loved his girlfriend. I had become Franklin, the man constantly bracing for heartbreak. The man who had lost count of how many times he had forgiven words that should have ended everything. My fingers tightened into a fist beneath the blanket. Not out of anger, but because I was trying to hold myself together. I didn't want to be the bad guy. I didn't want to be the one who walked away. But, for once, I wanted someone to fight for me, to grab my hand and say, "Don't go, I'll do better. I want to make this work." But those words never came from Sandra. Only threats, only tests, only silence. I turned my head again to look at her. She shifted, slightly, her brows furrowing as if sensing my restlessness even in sleep. For a fleeting moment, I wanted to wake her up, to tell her everything, to cry and beg her to stop doing this to us, to promise each other one last time that we'd fight, really fight to make things right, but I didn't move. Because deep down, I knew. If I woke her, she might just say again, "Maybe we should break up." And this time, I might not stop her. I closed my eyes and let the ache take over. The suspense of what tomorrow might bring. The fear of what choice I would make if she pushed me again. Because next time, I wasn't sure I'd have anything left to give. The next morning, I was still awake when Sandra stirred. She rolled over, eyes half open, her voice soft and drowsy. "Did you sleep at all?" I shook my head. "Not really." She sat up, brushing her hair behind her ear, and for a second I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd say something kind. Something warm. Something to remind me that the girl I fell in love with was still in there somewhere. But instead, she glanced at my phone on the nightstand and asked, "Did Shirley text you again?" I stared at her. The air went completely still. That one sentence, spoken so casually like it was the most natural thing in the world, shifted everything. Not because it was new, but because of what came after. I saw the notifications last. "Night," she continued, swinging her legs over the side of the bed. "Don't worry, I didn't open any messages, just saw the name." And honestly, it made a few things click. I sat up slowly, my voice cold despite my best efforts. "You went through my phone?" Her shoulders tensed. "No, I just saw it light up while you were in the shower yesterday, that's all." "And instead of asking me about it then, you let it stew?" She didn't respond. I stood up, heart pounding. "There's nothing going on with Shirley. You know that. But every time you feel insecure, every time you're afraid, you don't talk to me. You accuse. You look for proof of something that's not even there." "I just wanted the truth," she snapped, spinning to face me. "And maybe if you were honest about your feelings instead of pretending everything's fine." "I've been honest," I cut in. "I've been screaming the truth every day, Sandra, but you're not listening. You don't want the truth. You want confirmation that I'm the villain in your story." Her face flushed. "So now I'm the one who's paranoid, delusional?" I didn't answer. She stepped forward, hands trembling. "Are you in love with her?" The question stunned me, not because it was asked, but because in that moment, I didn't know the answer. I swallowed hard. "I care about her. She's been kind to me. She listens. She doesn't push me to the edge every time something goes wrong." Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. "So you are?" "No," I said quietly. "I'm not in love with her. But I don't think I'm in love with you anymore either." She gasped softly, took a shaky step back, and then she laughed, a hollow, bitter laugh that didn't sound like her. "That's what this has all been leading to, hasn't it? All the cold stares, the distance. You were just waiting for me to mess up bad enough so you could blame the end on me." "No," I said, voice cracking. "I was waiting for you to stop pushing me away." She turned her back, covering her mouth with her hand, finally crying, quiet, broken sobs that seemed more like pain than guilt. And then she said something that cut deeper than anything else that morning. "I never thought you'd actually leave." That was the moment everything shattered, because no matter how many times she threatened to walk away, she had always counted on me chasing her. She never once believed I'd call her bluff, and I realized I had been enabling her pain this whole time, letting her test me, letting her hurt me, letting her think I would always stay no matter what she said or did. But love isn't supposed to be a power struggle. It's supposed to feel safe. And standing in that bedroom with our words like sharp glass between us, I understood the truth. We didn't feel safe anymore. Not with each other. Not with ourselves. The conflict wasn't just between two people. It was between the love we remembered and the pain we had become. And there was no easy way back. The rest of the morning passed in near silence. Sandra stayed curled up on the edge of the bed, her back to me. I sat in the living room staring blankly at the coffee in my hands. It had gone cold an hour ago, but I kept holding it like it might warm me again. That conversation, those words, "I'm not in love with you anymore," kept echoing in my head like a distant thunder that refused to fade. I hadn't meant to say it. Or maybe I had. Maybe it had been sitting just behind my teeth for months, waiting for the moment I couldn't hold it back anymore. I didn't want to hurt her. God, I didn't. But when you push someone to the edge so many times, eventually they stop holding on. They let go. It wasn't until noon that she finally emerged from the bedroom. Her face was pale, eyes puffy, lips pressed tightly together. She didn't look at me when she passed. She just walked straight to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and leaned against the counter like her legs might give out any second. I stayed quiet. She broke the silence first. "So, what now?" I looked up slowly. "I don't know," she let out a bitter laugh. "You really don't, or you just don't want to say it?" "I don't want to hurt you again, Sandra," I said honestly. She finally looked at me, and I saw the storm in her eyes. "Then why does it feel like you already have?" I didn't have an answer, because I had. And the worst part? She had, too. Over and over. "I spent so much time afraid of you leaving," she said softly, walking over and sitting down on the opposite end of the couch. "Every time we fought, every time I felt you pull away, I thought if I said it first, it wouldn't hurt as much if you eventually did." I turned toward her. "Do you hear yourself? You were so scared of being abandoned, you became the one who abandoned me first, over and over. Do you know how hard it is to keep proving myself to someone who already decided I'll fail them?" Her jaw trembled. "You never said anything." "I did," I said, my voice breaking. "I said everything. I told you when I was hurting. I begged you to stop threatening to leave. I asked you to believe in me. And every single time you pushed me harder, just to see if I'd break." Tears spilled down her cheeks again. I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to be okay unless I had control. And I didn't know how to love you without losing myself, I whispered. We sat in silence again, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy, full of everything we had never said and everything we had said too many times. Then she reached into the side of the couch and pulled out something I hadn't seen in a long time, a worn photo, us, from our first year together. We were both smiling like we didn't know pain yet. "I used to look at this every time we fought," she said, holding it in trembling fingers, "to remind myself that we were real, that we weren't just this broken version of ourselves." I looked at the photo, and for a moment I wanted to believe we could get back to that, to the smiles, the simple joy. But that version of us didn't exist anymore, and pretending it did was what kept us in this endless loop of hurting and apologizing, fighting and making up, only to fight again. "Sandra," I paused, bracing myself. "I think we need to let go." She shook her head immediately, eyes wide with panic. No, don't say that. You can't say that. We can fix this. I'll do better, I swear. I won't say it again. I won't threaten to leave. I'll change." Her hands reached for mine, desperate, trembling, and I let her take them. But I didn't squeeze back. "I believe you want to," I said gently. "But I don't think it's about promises anymore. We've made so many, Sandra. And we broke every single one." "I love you," she whispered. "I know," I said, "and I love you too. But sometimes love isn't enough when it's drowning in fear and resentment." She sobbed then, loud, broken, the kind of cry that shakes your whole body. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to fix it. But I couldn't anymore, because fixing it meant losing myself again. "I don't want to lose you," she cried. "Please." Don't give up on us. I leaned forward and rested my forehead against hers, our tears mixing. I gave everything I had, Sandra. You kept testing whether I'd stay, and I stayed through every storm. But now I'm standing here, telling you I can't do it anymore. And I need you to believe me the way I always believed in you. She broke down again, crumbling against me, and I held her gently. Not as a lover, not as a partner, but as someone who had loved her more than anyone ever had and was saying goodbye. I wish we could have loved each other better, I whispered. She nodded, unable to speak. That was the moment it became real. Not just a fight, not just another one of her threats, but the end. The final confrontation wasn't screaming or slamming doors. It was quiet, honest, devastating, and it was the first time we had ever truly told each other the truth. A week passed. The apartment was quieter than I ever remembered. No more late-night arguments, no more slammed doors or drawn-out silences heavy with resentment. Just quiet, almost too quiet. Sandra moved out 3 days after our final conversation. She didn't ask me to stop her. She didn't beg again. She just packed her things in the same silence we had both become experts at living in, and she left the key on the kitchen counter without a note. I stood at the window that day and watched her walk away. She didn't look back, and neither did I, but the story didn't end there. I had spent so long trying to prove myself, trying to be enough, trying to hold together something that had been cracked for far too long. And now that it was finally over, I expected relief, freedom. What I didn't expect was the silence that followed, the kind that made you question everything. I wasn't angry at Sandra, not anymore. I pitied her, because the truth was, she never stopped loving me. She just didn't know how to love someone without destroying herself in the process. But there was one thing she didn't know, one final truth I had kept hidden, a truth that wasn't cruel, but necessary. My ultimate revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It was simple. She thought she had all the control in our relationship because she was the one who always threatened to leave, but I was the one who finally did, and I didn't just walk away emotionally. I walked away with everything she thought she had power over. Before we broke up, she had been working on a business pitch, a wellness startup idea she'd been building for over a year. She was always talking about how it would change her life, how it would be her legacy. But Sandra wasn't great with structure. She was all ideas, no foundation. And I'd been the one quietly helping behind the scenes. I did the research, I filed the paperwork, I spoke with the advisors, and when she got too emotional to handle meetings, I stepped in for her, under my name. So when the pitch was finalized, and the investment came through just 2 days after she left, the paperwork, the ownership, the control, was all mine. She called me when she found out. I still remember the disbelief in her voice. "You took it?" she asked, her tone brittle. "You really went behind my back and took what was mine?" "No," I said calmly. "I took what I built. You had the dream. I did the work." Her voice cracked. "You used me." I closed my eyes, took a breath, and whispered the same words she had said to me 100 times. "Maybe this is for the best." She didn't reply. She hung up. That was the last time we spoke. And as much as people love stories of heartbreak and chaos, I didn't burn everything down. I didn't throw away the photo albums or delete her from my life entirely. No, I kept a few things. The first gift she gave me, a pair of her earrings she always left on the dresser. Not because I missed her, but because I wanted to remember what it cost me to hold on for so long. Now, months later, I sit in the same apartment with new energy, new light. Surely visits sometimes, not as a lover, at least not yet, but as someone who understands the difference between comfort and chaos. She never tried to fix me, she just listened, and that was more healing than I ever expected. Willis, ever blunt, had said it best when he dropped by last week. "You look like someone who finally took a breath after years underwater." And he was right. I was breathing again. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was free. And maybe that's the ultimate revenge in a story like mine. Not the silence after a storm, but the peace you build after surviving it. Sandra wanted to test if I'd ever leave. I didn't just leave. I rebuilt everything from the ashes and made sure she would always remember the moment she lost the only person who ever truly stayed.